Hello, everyone. Welcome. We'll start today with a conversation with some colleagues and collaborators from Minerva who will share some very interesting insights into EdTech innovation and education innovation in Latin America. This is the fourth installment of Minerva Project's Inside Voices series. This is a series of candid conversations with educational leaders who are transforming education, whether building brand new ones or programs or radically changing existing ones. The conversation centers around the journey of transformation, often a bumpy process of triumphs and challenges that we must all navigate. My name is Sharan Chandradat Singh. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Minerva. And today, our conversation is going to be focused on the opportunities for education innovation in the Latin American region, and particularly how universities themselves are innovating. We will explore the topic on a macro level, but also share some very specific and concrete examples of a brand new university being created in Mexico. We are delighted to have with us two leaders, friends, and collaborators who will help us to do that. Fernando Valenzuela, who I'm sure many of you know, is a founding partner at Global Impact EdTech Alliance. Education innovation is his life's work, and he will be sharing the big picture context of the stage of higher education in Latin America and how he helped to come up with a strategy to design a brand new university in Mexico for the 21st century. Jorge Diaz Cuervo is the rector of the new Universidad de la Libertad, charged with bringing the design of Fernando and his colleagues to life and making it a reality. He will be sharing tangible, specific, and practical insights for those working on similar innovation projects, big or small. So Fernando, I'm going to go to you first with an opening question. And this is really a context-setting question. So the question is, can you give us a brief overview of higher education sector in LATAM right now? What is the current scenario and situation from your perspective? And more specifically, what challenges and pressures is the sector in Latin America dealing with right now?
Well, thank you. Let me start by saying that Latin America is really living through probably the biggest crisis in history. And in education, what has happened is that we traditionally have lost a number of talents, millions of students that are dropping out from every transition in school. That is a very, very profound problem in the region. The other element is that we are about to lose our demographical bonus. So the younger generation that typically was the characteristic of Latin America is about to end, and we're going to start seeing this multi-generational with older population living. There is a very recent study from The Economist that basically states that Latin America is one of the regions that had the most impact with the share of students that cannot read or understand what they're reading in the world. With that, we are finding many students from high school lacking the foundational knowledge needed to college level or university level work. So these students are not going to meet what we would say the college readiness. So that is a big issue going on in the region. Let me situate a little bit in Mexico right now. So Mexico has an average access of about 38% of the population. But if you compare that to other countries, the more developed countries, you're going to see countries that have 60, 70, 80% of access in the population. Then you have, a number of organizations in the public segment, in the private sector. Here is a big difference between Brazil and Mexico, for example. The private sector of universities typically would have the elite, the more advanced technologies. And then you have in Brazil the opposite perspective. You have the private sector serving, lower income population. So there's a number of different models. You're going to see a number of, large institutions. You're going to see, over 3,500 institutions only in Mexico. So there is a complex environment. There are a number of challenges, and I think that calls for radical decisions. And I think these radical decisions are the ones that are being taken right now by some of these institutions to really embrace innovation, to change education from becoming a finite game to becoming a more of an infinitive game where you learn to learn for a number of years. So this would kind of the general context, and I would stop here to begin the conversation.
Well, that's a perfect segue into part B of my question to you, Fernando, which is, with the very specific challenges and the pressure that's being put on the system, from friction is born innovation. Where is innovation happening in Latin America right now? And is it happening specifically within higher education and traditional universities or outside of that environment?
So I would say there are a number of forces happening. So you have all of the, the strengths of the MOOCs that already changed this idea of having a lot of information, a lot of data, millions of students. And it will surprise you to see the level of share that the MOOCs have from Latin America. It is surprising when you look at Udemy, Udacity, edX, Coursera, all of these players. Surprisingly, you see millions of Latin America students trying to reskill, upskill, find knowledge that they don't typically would find in the universities. On the other end of the spectrum, you're going to have the boot camps. You're going to have models that are growing and that are developing employability skills in 3 months, in 6 months, very intensive, looking for programming capabilities, digital media capabilities, and are connecting with the work that the universities are probably missing. So what happens is that the universities are required to take the best from the MOOCs, the best from the boot camps, and develop in the middle some sort of collaboration. So I always say that the innovation is not going to come from technology, but it's going to come from different collaboration models, a more radical set of connections between traditional universities and a new ecosystem. There's the neo universities coming up with specific curated programs with specific focus and all of that. So I think it's about collaboration. It's about connecting the university in a bigger ecosystem. It's about hybrid learning, more flexibility, more digital integration, new products, short courses, industry collaboration, and new partnerships with micro-credentialing and the MOOC and bootcamp collaboration as well.
Well, I'll switch now to Jorge. So Jorge, you have described La Universidad y la Libertad as a disruptor of the traditional model, that you're breaking the mold. Can you give a brief overview? And in relation to what Fernando just said, you're also creating this university in a very different way. You're employing partnership and collaboration deeply in setting up this institution. Can you give a brief overview of the concept of the new university and how it's different from existing institutions?
Sure. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Sharon, for having me in this forum. What do we mean by breaking the mold? We believe that students today are victims of an obsolete educational system that resists to change. So if a learning environment is wonderful, is motivating, or is supposed to be invigorating, why students today want to get out, to finish as soon as possible? So we believe something must be wrong with that system. New generations know that they are wasting their time and they are demanding something different. We believe they want something different, better. We believe that memorize to repeat is useless, that linear accumulation of information is also useless. Instead, we believe that developing skills to be a good observer, to understand changing environments, and to act when opportunities arise is what works nowadays. Because life is changing, and today change happens faster than ever before. So yes, Sharon, we have developed with our partners an intense and demanding educational model based on the development of skills and abilities to think systematically and connect ideas with creativity in contexts, like I said, that are permanently evolving. So yes, that's a mold we're trying to break, Sharon.
That's very good. Now, I want to double click on the partnership question because you have the ability. I mean, there's been centuries of creating universities by hiring, specific faculty and building programs within, but you chose from the genesis of this project to collaborate with a range of players, both from within the formal education system and outside. Why specifically was that route chosen versus going down the more traditional route?
Well, because we think that there are two problems that we have to solve, Sharon, and that is a growing general perception that higher education is a waste of time and money. And a second problem is that there's also a growing perception that among employers that people coming out of universities today are not well educated and are not prepared with the skills they need. So yes, in terms of a learning curve, partnering with institutions like Minerva, with Universidad Francisco Marroquín, with Atlas Network, with Southwestern University, is helping us to move fast in terms of having the opportunity to be developing those skills with our students as early as next September, in our case.
Yeah, this is extremely bold. A university created and established with students being enrolled in under 2 years. One thing I think that will be helpful for the audience before we move on to another round of questions is for you to just briefly describe what specifically the university is delivering, what makes those programs distinctive and unique, because I know the structure of the programs is quite different than what you would see in a traditional university. So can you give us an overview of that, Jorge?
Sure. So let me point out three elements that make us different. First of all, flexibility. In our program, each student defines its path and its rhythm. So there's no punishment if you want to take off 1 year to start up your own business, or to go study abroad, or to go and have a job, a real job experience. There's no punishment. You can choose your rhythm and your path. Second, in addition to our BA program in innovation and business, students will receive digital badges in blockchain technology for courses, sequences, and diplomas. So you don't have to wait 4 years to get your certification to go out and find a job. You're going to be receiving digital badges or insignias that can show the world that you are learning something, that you have certain abilities throughout the world. And if you get your BA diploma, fine. If not, if that's not what you need, that's okay with us. We will not punish you. We will not force you to stay as long as 4 years to get your certificate. Second, Sharon, is high impact experiential learning. As you know, we're part of Grupo Salinas, one of the biggest and most important economic conglomerates in Mexico City. So we want this to be a real dual program. Grupo Salinas has more than 20 companies in 6 countries. So we want to offer real job experiences, structured and aligned to our taxonomy and learning objectives, so that courses will be accredited while working. And also, our course leads, facilitators, mentors, and speakers, in a very high percentage, are going to come from the talent and experience of Grupo Salinas' top executives, successful people who know the real world, who know how the real world works. So we want to have these top executives with experience in doing business, very involved with the university. And finally, a third characteristic of our program is what we call a phygital delivery of our educational products. We are in the final stage of building our campus, designed by Rosa Bosch. She's a very renowned architect specialized in designing educational spaces. So our campus has, for example, 6 different learning spaces to discover, to encounter, to change, for creation, for tutoring, and for concentration. But we will also be working with a digital platform, forum from Minerva, which allows us to have a mix of virtual experiences, in-person experiences, and in-person plus virtual experiences. And this all goes through an assessment process, within Forum platform that ensures us that the learning objectives and the pedagogy is correctly put forward. So those three things, Sharon, I think is what you can say that really makes Universidad Libertad a different product for students.
A very strong focus on flexibility and real-world application is coming out of there. And then it provides an opportunity to really innovate in the use of space. That's this phygital concept is, many universities are constrained by how they can adapt their space, but the ability to build from scratch, I think, has given you a unique opportunity to demonstrate phygital in a very tangible way. I'd like to switch back to Fernando now, because we've heard a bit about La Universidad de la Libertad and what differentiates it and what its agenda is. But Fernando, for our colleagues on this call today who are thinking about transformational initiatives for their own institutions, and as someone who has a truly global perspective, you're a student of the industry and you understand what's happening across the world. What were the core principles or really the best practices that you and your colleagues followed when you were coming up with the conceptualization of this new university?
Well, first, imagine that you are sitting in a restaurant and a guy like Ricardo Salinas comes by and with a napkin, basically saying, I want to create my legacy. I want to create something that is totally different. And this was the initial stages of extensive research process that also had a lot of methodology. We went into the Institute for the Future to design futures. We talked to over 40 of the leaders that are creating pieces of these disruptive new voices of higher education. So our aim was to provoke a reflection, propose new thinking processes around some established ideas, but some original ones. We identified these references, practices, these new technologies, and we basically came up with a few conclusions. Like, if you look at education today, there are still a number of institutions that try to teach you how to do things. There are also a number of institutions that are trying to teach you what to do. And today, we believe that we need to teach people why. And the why is very, very relevant. So we started from that. So the idea was that we could design something that has a physical space, but with intention. If you're going to move yourself to a physical space after COVID, you cannot go into a classroom. You cannot go into a room that you're going to find in an office or in another school. And this is why we decided to engage with Rosanne and to begin discussing this idea of the phygital scenarios. So what is the right mix between the physical space, the digital space, the right in the middle? What is the distribution of a space where you need to collaborate, you need to explore, you need to probably reflect by yourself, but you also need to build prototypes. So this whole idea of the phygital space aligned with the curricula, aligned with the students' freedom to choose and flexibility, this was the very first discussions. And then we found out that Minerva, for example, as one of the key disruptors 10 years ago, was the right partner for us in bringing what we would say a Minerva 2.0, because we're bringing some of these elements that you probably didn't have in the original days of Minerva, where you stated, the campus is the city and things like that. How do we deal with this phygital campus? And how do we integrate content that is very well connected to the business scenarios? And we started from business because of the nature of this institution. But the idea is that you're going to find a place where you're going to flow in your learning. There's going to be, if you look at education today, you find elements where are very frustrating. When you don't do good in education, you tend to leave instead of trying it again. And when you do good, you say, I'm done. I already achieved my diploma. So what happens if we bring concepts where when you fail is because you need probably to get more skills or to get connected with someone else? So this idea of you don't learn only from a teacher, you have other mentors, you have people that are practitioners. So the idea is that when you are failing to learn, you realize that you need additional skills, you need to collaborate, you need to find other people. And when you win, when you're doing good, that means that you can aim higher. So those concepts, and it was a very interesting coincidence because the UNESCO Higher Education Forum in Barcelona happened last year. And I actually presented these ideas in a document that I'll probably share in the chat here, which is the futures of higher education. And we said, there is no one single future. It has to be plural. It has to be different scenarios, different signals. So what we came up with was many of the principles that are being developed at Universidad Libertad are designed for this type of learning, for the connection between business, the real life, and connecting and collaborating with others under a more flexible scenario. But also, if you're going to decide to go to a campus, is because in that campus, as Jorge was mentioning, you're going to create, you're going to be finding the right talent, you're going to select, you're going to discover, you're going to change. So all of these in the campus, connected with the right technology, with the right pedagogy, what happens is that you're going to engage. Let me just finalize by sharing some of these principles that we developed by discussing the curricula and the physical space between Minerva and Rosanne Bosch Studio. Was what if we think about space, people, time, and activities differently? So these four elements, some of them are fixed. Some people are fixed in the university. Some spaces are going to be fixed. Some activities are going to be the same. But what happens if we then begin creating some other spaces that are either fluid or more flexible? What happens if we create activities that are fluid or flexible? And what happens if we manage time under more fluid and flexibility? So these concepts, when you turn that, the physical space, the curricula, the technology, the student experience, the support that these students need, those are the elements that we use to design this new university.
Thank you, Fernando. You know, one of the biggest challenges that leaders in higher education, and I would say education globally, face today is it's evolving so rapidly. The optionality is pervasive. It's on a regular basis, there are things that are happening that are on the forward frontier, and the time to market is much shorter. So one of the big questions I had is, when you went through that process in the early stages of conceptualization, how did you prioritize and select what you would focus on? Because, you know, you talk to any university leader out there today, and just EdTech alone, just the technology part of it, they're spoiled for choice, and it's an unknown frontier, and it's very difficult to keep abreast of developments, let alone choose the best technology for your particular need and institution. When you're thinking about that at the scale of an entirely new institution, where the physical is interacting with the digital and the curriculum and the application, I imagine prioritization and selection would have been a challenge. What can you share with our audience about how you made difficult decisions?
Well, first, you're right on. I mean, I have the privilege of being exposed to thousands of technologies in education for over a decade now. And I am able to see the difficulty from people that understand pedagogy but don't understand technology, people that understand technology but don't understand pedagogy. Neither one of those understands capital and resources and financial implications, and neither one of the three know how to use the right pedagogy with the right technology, with the right investment to create something meaningful and have an impact. So that realization was one of the key decisions why we decided that Minerva had the right mix between pedagogy and technology by the way you designed the active learning processes, the experiential learning processes, connecting the taxonomy of the skills that you wanted to build with the right technology, but placing that into a physical environment and with the right philosophy that the group and the Universidad Libertad was looking for. And this is why we looked at a university as an ecosystem. We have to connect from the outside, bring it in, but we're not creating a replica of Minerva or a replica of other Rosambosch project or Universidad Marroquín in Guatemala. We are creating a very unique identity. And that is what is going to make any university different. We're going to have different layers. But you cannot lose the identity. You cannot lose what makes you different. And then you're going to have a physical experience in the campus, an online experience, a metaverse experience, whatever you want, but you're not losing the experience. So that was kind of the right mix. And the decisions that we had to make was, where do we start? How do we make this a legitimate organization? Because what happens is the traditional segment in education would probably come and say, yeah, a new university, we've been here for 200 years. And why would students do something different? Well, because we're meaningful for the future, because we are not playing around with the concept. This is a serious institution backed by science, backed by technology, but just created under different assumptions that are more modern and more realistic to what the world needs today.
So Jorge, after Fernando and his colleagues came up with this very aspirational design for the institution that really looked at the realm of opportunity. There is so much opportunity in the ability to innovate right now in higher education. And you had the benefit, as we had at Minerva many years ago, of a blank slate to be able to build from scratch. But of course, decision-making and prioritization was a challenge in the conceptualization. But that challenge is, I imagine, only amplified now in its execution. So tell us a bit about how you are overcoming and what have been sort of your main challenges in bringing something that is very bold and ambitious in concept to life.
Yeah, well, first, let me tell you that the work done by Fernando and his team is really impressive. I mean, it took him several months to really take the most innovative experiences out there and putting it together into this project. It's a very, and I want to say it, Fernando, it's an impressive work. And yes, now he threw me the ball, and now I have to make this happen. Let me, for example, just give you one example of the challenges you have to deal with. For example, accreditation with our local authorities, with our Ministry of Education. Of course, translating a disruptive and innovative educational program for government officials with no motivation to change their point of view and to do it in a short period of time was a challenge. I mean, this translation of something completely new, completely bold, completely disruptive, and try these officials who are used to do the same over and over again and in a very traditional way was quite a challenge. Another challenge that we are facing, for example, and we're working on it, it's not really solved yet, is creating this phygital experience. Because it sounds very nice and very easy to do, but it's not. Because we're not talking about hybrid programs. We're talking of taking the best of both worlds, of the phygital world and of the in-person world, and turn that into immersive learning experiences. So I guess that's a huge challenge to make that happen, that phygital experience, that immersive experience, taking out the best of what the digital instruments offer and programs, but also understanding the importance of in-person work and networking and working physically with people on campus is quite a challenge. Sure.
Let me ask a follow-up question, because I imagine that everyone who's in the traditional system on this call today has experienced the tension between having ideas to push bold innovation and meeting the firm wall that is regulatory requirements and restrictions and accreditation. How, with such a distinctive approach, such a unique mix of physical and virtual and experiential and theoretical, are you navigating the complexities of getting these programs accredited and approved for delivery, and also in such a short time?
Well, let me give you an example. In order for us, I mean, you have to be very creative to go through these hurdles, these official accreditation processes. And for example, we decided to have an LMS called NEO in the middle between Forum and the Mexican authorities. Why? Because they know NEO, they've worked with NEO, so it was easier for them to give us the accreditation if we use NEO as our LMS. So what we are doing is we're translating Forum into NEO and NEO to our accreditors. No? So you have to be very creative and find the way to do that, because for them to understand Forum, first we should have to translate all that in Spanish, all Forum platform in Spanish, and then make them understand what's behind the educational model on Forum. And that was going to take us at least a year of explanations, of working with them. So putting this NEO platform in between Forum and the Ministry of Education really got us through the process.
So you created a bridge, a virtual bridge. Exactly. I realize as a way to circumvent the lengthy process, to find a way to translate the uniqueness of what you were doing into a language that they understood. I'm sure easier than you made it sound, harder, than you made it sound, but it's very good that you found a way and that students will be taking classes in September. I'd like to ask you both, Fernando and Jorge, two wrap-up questions. So Fernando, over to you first. How do you think that Libertad will provoke systemic change in Mexican higher ed, but really in Latin American higher education? I mean, we've heard a lot about the concept, the intent, how it's being created, what makes it distinctive. But is it just another unique and curious institution, or does it have an opportunity to provoke systemic change at the regional and hemispheric level?
Yeah, first, I have to say that one of my main accomplishments is that after the design and the discussions over a year, Jorge and the team and I are still friends. So that takes that, and also the team from Minerva and the team from Rosan Bosch and all the people involved. So it has been a challenge, and we are really, I mean, if you look at the opportunity that we had, this is the legacy of someone that has decided to disrupt major industries in Mexico. So the telecommunication industry, the banking industry, the retail industry, the entertainment industry. So if we are able to say this can be the first demonstration that education can be truly disruptive and can be truly changed without losing the background of what you're trying to learn and why you're learning. So this whole idea that the universities need to stay the way they are because they've always worked, we're going to have to change that. And this is something that is the commitment from Jorge and the team. When you see the level of talent that Jorge has put together to discuss the complementarity of ideas, the friction that is always present when you're trying to say, how do we teach something like this? Why don't we do something different? But we would lose some level of, involvement or legitimacy or the right level of demand that we are creating to build the talent that we need. This level of design and this level of discussion is not happening anymore in the traditional universities because they just follow the rules. They just follow the syllabus. They just follow the regulation. And when you don't follow, and I don't know of any single government in the world that is designed to innovate. So innovation is always going to be in the forefront and regulation is always going to be in the background. So what we're trying to do is create the first seed of something that is truly disruptive, but truly relevant for the students. And we're aiming for these millions of students where the system is failing them. And I think this is what's going to create a systemic change. This is going to be an element where people are going to visit. And when you visit our campus, and I'm sure that we're going to be very open to have other institutions connect with the world, bring technology, bring people to understand and discuss and question, because this is not a model that is going to sit for a year being exactly the same. It's going to continuously evolve. And those small differences are not happening in traditional education because they typically will not evolve with this type of speed.
Jorge, I'm going to ask you the same question. You are the person who's driving the very large bus now. How do you feel? You're dealing with the transactional details, the operational details every single day. And you have an eye on the short term. You need to think about what happens next week and the day after that. But how do you envisage this project and this institution driving systemic change at the national and regional level?
Well, I think, Sharon, that if we succeed in terms of showing that there are other ways, there are new ways to teach and there are no new ways to learn, and that there can be learning processes that can be shaped with freedom and liberty by each student instead of imposing just one path or the right path. If we can show that a free learning environment where we treat our students as individuals who want to explore in their own way, in their own interests, and that creates value for them and for society, I think we will be pulling the rest of the educational system to change. I know it's difficult. Institutions have been there for decades, centuries in some cases, and they're very big, and they're used to do the things in a certain way. Even the people involved in the process are not very eager to change the way they do it. So it's also a cultural change in terms of how we understand the learning process. And like Fernando said, we don't want 4-year learning processes. We want lifelong learning processes. And at the Universidad, Libertad, we try to say it often, you can come and go for the rest of your life. We're not interested in having you tied to our chairs and desks for 4 years and never see you again. We want to offer you a space where you can learn throughout your whole life, different experiences, real world experiences, academic experiences, digital experiences, networking experiences that can really help you be a good observer of your contexts that are always changing, environments that are always changing. But if we give you the skills to think systematically, to have complex thinking, arithmetic thinking, if we help you learn how to communicate efficiently, how to negotiate, how to solve problems, then you will be successful in any field you want to develop throughout your life. So if we can show that this is possible, then we might help conservative or traditional institutions to try to move this way too.
Very good. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for these insights. It's been quite eye-opening and engaging. We have a